Metroid Prime 3 is a game that came out with little press or hype surrounding it. I was afraid this was because it was going to play a lot like Metroid Prime Hunters for the Nintendo DS. Linear stages and repetitive gameplay with few puzzle-solving aspects. I was wrong, for the most part. It is a faithful conclusion to a wonderful trilogy that deserves all the recognition it gets. The game starts off shortly after Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. You're introduced to these bounty hunters that are similar to the ones from Hunters, but not the same. They help you out in the second stage right after the introductory stage, but then you're all by yourself for the most part. Also like Hunters, you travel to more than one planet. However, it's done in a very Metroid-like fashion. Each world is like a subsection of other Metroid games, like Norfair or Brinstar. Only this time around, each one is a separate planet. You must backtrack, search for power-ups, and all the usual things in the Metroid series. The controls are probably the most important thing to bring up, because without playing it yourself, you're probably thinking there's no way it could work with the Wii controller. Well, it does, surprisingly so. Look around using the Wiimote to look up, down, left, right, and much like the right analog stick in a console first-person computer, it just feels natural. You think it'd be cumbersome and you find yourself stopping and turning often, but I find myself blazing through the game without stopping, even during intense platforming segments. Everything just runs seamlessly. One minute, and by minute I mean minute, gripe controls-wise, is when that a cutscene happens and you can't see where you're aiming your Wiimote, the camera is just randomly heading in one direction when the cutscene ends, because you have no idea where you're aiming exactly without the reticle. Again, so minor it wouldn't have been mentioned if there was anything else worth noting. Many of the game's new items and mechanics are awesome. The grapple beam can now be used to attach to things and yank them, which is pretty cool and fights against enemies with shields. You also have a new overdrive mode that sacrifices one sub-tank of life and gives you invincibility and overpowered shots. It's a lot of fun, but it isn't used as a crutch that ruins the game either. A few other cool things are added, like the ability to maneuver levers and stuff by turning the Wiimote. Gimmicky? Just a tad. But cheap thrills can be nice too. Also, you can climb up certain edges, but only ones that have this green light effect, which doesn't make much sense to me, but oh well. Also, you use your ship to make airstrikes using a new visor. It's cool, but nothing really revolutionary. One of the greatest parts of the game is the amazing boss fights. I can't show you too many of them because many of them are spoilerish in nature, which is a new concept due to the fact that Metroid Prime 3 Corruption actually has a much more central story than the rest of the series, bar Metroid Fusion. I'll cover that in just a bit. But they are challenging on veteran difficulty, creative, and none of them can be damaged simply by shooting at them. There's always some method of exposing their weak point before doing this, and this is possible due to total and complete aiming control you have in this game other than the two Metroid Prime games that were not capable of doing this. And the challenge is satisfying on veteran difficulty, not at all frustrating. The game, as I mentioned, has a much more prominent story going on. It starts off being a bit too heavy, but an hour or so in the game gives you much more freedom and interrupts you less. You have a Navi-like communication with a supercomputer that keeps you from feeling isolated and alone, but keeps quiet until necessary as to not be annoying. The game is also fully voice-acted, but some of the voices and writing can be pretty lame.
Damn! They're targeting the planetary defense system!
Other than the voice acting, the sound effects are great. The soundtrack is phenomenal, though I did think the title screen was a bit too Halo-sounding. Metroid is not Halo, and it shouldn't try to be either. But the endgame music is loyal to the previous two Prime games, which have had phenomenal tracks. Weapons are relatively unchanged, but they've always been great sound effects-wise.
Damn! They're targeting the planetary defense system!
Finally, this game is the best looking Wii game thus far, aside from Super Mario Galaxy. Screenshots and video really just don't do it justice. You gotta see it on your own TV. The Prime trilogy may be over, but that doesn't mean we can't see more from the Metroid series on the Wii. This is a great purchase for your Wii, and is one of the few that justify purchasing the system at the time. It won't be long, I predict, until the Wii is flooded with quality titles, much like the Nintendo DS. But this is a great game to hold you off until then. I give it an 8.9 out of 10. Great game.
Damn! They're targeting the planetary defense system!